the Forbidden Door has closed for another year. We'll run down the New Japan aspects of that show, such as they were. We also have a few more title matches announced, some injury news. We'll speculate on a couple of guys' futures and look at how things like that might shape the next month or two of New Japan cards as we approach the Road to Destruction tour. We'll take a look at all that and the state of the company as a whole with Jeremy Finestone. I'm Steven Conway. This is Speaking of Strong Style. Welcome, everyone, to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. We are contributors to the Fight Game Media Network. And I would like to say hi to everybody that's watching us live here. Colin's with us. Fernando's with us. Brad, glad all of you guys are here. And anybody else join us. But we have had a quiet week New Japan-wise. No shows. In fact, we still won't have any until September 7th when Blue Justice takes place in Chiba. However, there was an AEW pay-per-view labeled Forbidden Door that had New Japan talent on it. And but for me, Jeremy, I mentioned before, I'm not going to belabor the point that I'm kind of out on American wrestling at the moment. It isn't quite doing it for me. So I've been catching up on I caught up to the 5-Star Grand Prix just in time to get the pay-per-view and watch the finals. So big congratulations to Momo Watanabe for winning the 5-Star Grand Prix. I think that's a pretty exciting move. I did not think Stardom saw Momo as a top main event star. They had kept her, Jeremy, as a upper mid-card wrestler, sometimes can go up into that main event spot, like the way New Japan does with the number 2 guy in the faction. And that's kind of where Momo was. And I was worried about her, frankly, because when Natsuko Tora disbanded Oedo Tai, which was the previous heel faction, and created the Hate faction, Tora was number 1 and Momo was a clear number 2. And Rina, one of the twins, was on the way up. Then Saya Kamitani turned heel and joined. And I just thought, boy, is Momo just going to get lost in the shuffle right there? And instead, it looks like they might be running a very interesting babyface turn for her. That was interesting. And then now I'm working on catching up with the Dream Star Grand Prix on Marigold because it's tournament time. And then the N1 tournament starts up. So despite being a bit out on American wrestling right now, I'm keeping track. I follow the recaps and I know what's going on. I have plenty of Joshi wrestling to follow, and I'm catching up on Noah and Sendai Girl. So I'm having a good time watching this stuff. It's been a good week. It's just not a New Japan centric week for me.
I didn't have much to say other than I've been playing a lot of Legend of Zelda, but I was kicking myself because we're talking about what we did the week before, and I didn't talk about it, but I went to a Comic Con like 2 weeks ago. I went to Galaxy Con over in San Jose. I literally could just like a mile away. And when I was a kid, there was this writer. His name is Mark Waid. You see his fingerprints in a lot of comics all over the place and movies and stuff like that. Generally just reimagining concepts that were very dated in the 60s and then kind of contemporizing a lot of it.
Oh, okay.
Well, he wrote a book that was fully painted with watercolors by this artist named Alex Ross in like 1992 or 1993. And it was like the future of Superman and Batman, where they had all just kind of gone their separate ways because the world kind of passed them by. And it was the age of heroes in a world where the world didn't want heroes anymore. They wanted like vigilantes and all that stuff. So I went there and, I was hunting for things for that, but I ran into him and he had a script of the original book that he wrote autographed and he signed it out to me. And I wanted to show that off to everybody because not only is it, the reality is that in this world, in following comic books and pro wrestling and all this stuff, there's a very real risk of idolizing your heroes and finding out that they're not the people that you should be idolizing. So, there's that lesson to be learned. But it's incredibly gratifying when you run into somebody that has a significant impact on your life and at the same time is a decent human being. You can see like books right here that he's written that are like front and center right here, because I'm just like, there are a few of these writers out in the world that I just sing the praises of, and Mark Waid is one of them. So I meant to shout that out because it was a really cool story that happened, and I like to share those little sides with you guys because I care about you guys.
And well, here's one for you here. Maria says, "Isn't Batman considered a vigilante?"
He is, but he doesn't kill, and so the idea of these vigilantes with no regard for the people that they're trying to save. They're there to fight rather than to save people, and that was the thing. Fernando knows.
Fernando, I was going to say Fernando Zaya says it's an awesome comic book. Fernando has read that one, so there you go.
It is one of the more popular comics of all time.
Okay, well, that's very cool. Brad mentioned, by the way, that the last Sendai Girl show, they drew just under 4,000 fans. The Stardom, a 5-star Grand Prix, had good attendance. They drew several thousand a couple of times during that one, over 1,000 more times than usual, and had strong attendance. So, it kind of puts you in a better frame of mind, Jeremy, after being kind of down on New Japan and seeing that low attendance for the G1. And I was looking back, as I often do, and I'm reading Chris Charlton's book, Eggshells, which is about wrestling in the Tokyo Dome. And it's not a narrative book. And it's not really a traditional history. It simply goes through each Tokyo Dome wrestling show until a few years ago when the book was published. So there have been others since then, but it basically goes through each show in the Tokyo Dome over the years. And of course, the vast majority of those are New Japan shows. New Japan's run the Dome far more often than anybody else. But I'm also reminded that there have been women's shows, All Japan, SWS, and the SWS thing made me think about today's New Japan.
Okay.
And here's what I mean.
Sure.
All Japan was doing well in the late 80s, doing pretty well. They had Genichiro Tenryu, they had Jumbo Tsuruta on top. They had, well, until his murder, of course, Bruiser Brody was one of their top foreign stars, Stan Hansen. And they were drawing well. Everything was going fine. And a guy with an awful lot of money came around and wanted to start his own wrestling company. And he saw a gap in the marketplace, and he got Tenryu to jump from All Japan because Tenryu started to suspect that maybe his rivalry with Tsuruta, maybe he could be the number one guy instead of one of in All Japan. He jumped over to SWS. They got the great Kabuki. They got Sano. They even got George Takano, the original Cobra from New Japan. Put together a pretty good roster to the point that they ran a joint card in the Tokyo Dome that drew very, very well with WWF talent on it. It got to be a big deal. But it took a lot of the top guys away from All Japan.
Right.
And the way All Japan handled that was they took a group of young stars and pushed them to the flipping moon. And those young stars became what are known now as the Four Pillars. So you had Mitsuharu Misawa, who was on the card and was Tiger Mask. And I'm boiling an awful lot down to a little bit here, but Tiger Mask became Mitsuharu Misawa, who became a top star, Toshiaki Kawada, Kenta Kobashi.
And we're boiling down the last 3 years in like a matter of 5 minutes. So I get it.
Yeah, they lost 4 or 5 top level stars. They didn't lose Jumbo Tsuruta. They still had him. They didn't lose Stan Hansen. They still had him. So they still had things. And it just reminds me a little bit of, Kabuki, Tenryu, a few others there. Yatsu, another star, Okada, Ospreay, Jay White, just blow after blow after blow. And what we saw from All Japan is they went all in on pushing those young stars. And it's not that they didn't lose. It's not that they never lost. But they only lost in key situations. They built them up and they won and they won and they won and they won. And then lo and behold, those guys are the 4 pillars that an entire boom period came out of. What I'm hoping is that we have 4 young stars. There could be the 4 pillars here in New Japan if they could just get their act together on the booking. We've got a lot of talent in New Japan that's just waiting to go to the top. And looking at that, it just the 2 situations aren't identical. They're not apples to apples, and it's a different era. I understand all that. But it was funny, Jeremy, laying there reading about what SWS did to All Japan and then how All Japan responded and seeing the parallels. A whole bunch of guys leave for a company that's run by a guy who has a lot of money and wants to run a wrestling company. And, again, I'm not trying to
you're broad stroking, but you're not trying to be.
A guy with a lot of money draws away a lot of stars, forcing them to push young people. And I'm just thinking that, boy, if New Japan gets its act together, maybe there's a boom period coming. It actually cheered me up a little bit. Oh, this has happened to a company before, and they came out of it in good shape.
We're coming off of Forbidden Door, right? And there's news coming out of it that's generally not great for New Japan. No. But at the same time, it's business, right? It's these talents that are seeing the reasons for them being in one promotion dry up and seeing the grass is greener on the other side. And you have a guy that says, yeah, I'm interested in you. You may not be the top guy, but you're going to get paid a ton more money. And, Hiromu saw how the other half lived this past weekend. He was chirping online about, the boss is saying thank you and all these things. And I don't think he was talking about Tony Khan when he was talking about what boss is saying thank you, because, you can read between the lines there. And there's only so much of tearing down these young guys before you shoot them to the moon. And I think we're past the point of, giving obstacles for the Reiwa or these young guys or Yuya. And it's just, you got to pick a guy, you got to make him the winner, and you got to have it so when that audience goes, they know that guy's going to win every time. You're my guy, and I'm going to go home happy after seeing my guy. And their problem is they can't figure out who it is. And their problem is they're focused on saying goodbye to the old era without ushering in the new one. Right. And everything just screams prioritizing the wrong things right now. And the people who have been with you this entire time, what's going to happen when Tanahashi's gone if you don't have anybody built up for the next thing? I'm not sure about Aaron Wolf. Right? Yeah. I'm not sure.
It's impossible to tell. I mean, he could be Gable Steveson, who was an Olympic champion wrestler, but never picked up pro wrestling and never really had, one match on TV or something like that? That was it. We don't know. He might be the next Kurt Angle who picks it up immediately. It's almost certainly somewhere in between those two extremes. But that doesn't mean that you can just main event a guy with 6 months of training. You can't bank on that.
And so you think about that, and you think about a show like Forbidden Door, which was supposed to be a co-branded event and all these things. And in hindsight, it was an AEW pay-per-view with some New Japan stars. Granted, I think that the right guys got pinfalls for the New Japan company. And generally, Tony Khan and company did right by New Japan with what they were obligated to do on this show. But I'm still a little disappointed that it wasn't more of a synergistic enterprise between the two. Takeshita coming out at one point and not having a match, that was the biggest miss to me of the whole thing, was the inability to land that and figure it out. And I get it. Concussion, whatever. Why is he in a match with Ishii on Collision? Why isn't that match on 0 Hour? Why isn't there were just things that were so close, and I'm sure there were politics. I am acutely aware that, there is frayed relationships going on, You know, it's one of those things where behind the closed doors, there's a little bit of finger pointing and like da 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 da. But when the doors open and the press is there, handshakes and smiles, and we're all on the same page here. And it's not great, but it's business, and in a lot of ways, they need each other. Well, how does New Japan need AEW? You see Takeshita, you see their business, you see them leaning on AEW to help prop up what business that they have when they're not confident that their own business is going on. And AEW, let's be honest, New Japan is their farm system. You know, it's like their big stars are all coming over there. Gabe Kidd's the next one. We've been talking about it since a year and a half ago that you can start counting it down. And with him showing up on Dynamite last night, fully part of the Death Riders, it's only a matter of time before he's made his last appearance in New Japan. Like that February 1-year contract, maybe he gets a special like contract where he's got like 5 or 6 dates for the next year. But the days of Gabe Kidd doing tours with New Japan feel like it's going to run very, very concurrent with the retirement of Takahashi on these wrestling tours as well.
All right. Well, we're going to get to your questions. I see a couple of them in there, including an interesting one there, and we will take a look. So let's look at this Forbidden Door show, Jeremy. And we first of all, it was in London. So that's a bit of a difference. It had been in, well, they've done one in Canada, I think. Didn't they do one in Toronto? They've done one in the U.S. This one in London at the O2 Arena, which is a big building in London. And it did announced 18,992. So probably not that high, but 17,000 there. And that is a very strong crowd at the O2 in London. There's no doubt that the people were interested in seeing this show. Of course, they don't get to see AEW as often as the people in the States do. And so there was excitement for this live. And that had to be good for morale. Of course, we know that Dynamite and Collision does not draw particularly well, but the pay-per-views always do. And people suspected that they were going to get a good show right here. Yeah. And Benkin mentions the Canada one was Ospreay and Kenny. Yeah, that was
they ran that one back. Yeah.
That's right. That was a brilliant match too. So, Jeremy, you watched this. I didn't. So yes. I'm going to set them up and you can knock them down. Now, did you see the 0 hour that included?
I did. I watched everything, Steven. I did a recap, and it was on me to make sure I caught everything from beginning to end because fearless leader Garrett Gonzalez was not able to watch the 0 hour stuff. So I'm going to recap everything that I already recapped on the Forbidden Door show, but I don't exactly remember what I said on there. So we're going to run this back. And if you guys are really interested, you can compare what I said. I generally think I'm going to say the same thing though.
Okay. So the first one we saw, El Desperado and Yuya Uemura make the trip over to team with Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly. So a little bit of the Undisputed Era and all that kind of stuff, that those groups with Despe and Uemura, they face Josh Alexander, Hechicero, Leo Rush, and Action Andretti. It went about 12 minutes and 13 seconds. What can you tell us?
The Crew, the Don Callis family versus Ontai and Paragon. The entire 0 hour lineup was actually really, really good. They started out hot and fast in this match. The long and the short of it is they set this up for when Yuya Uemura got into the ring and had a one-on-one match. He kicked Leo Rush's ass and he got the pin. Like there was a lot of action and everything, but there was no like 50-50 when they were in the ring. Yuya gave him one suplex that wasn't quite the pin, and then he gave him the deadbolt, and that was that. One of the things I really liked about this show was the unequivocal putting over of Yuya Uemura. Even though he wasn't on the main card, I thought it was really, really important for him to get a visual win on this show, even if it wasn't a big deal. And Brad says Crew needs to get the call for the Super Junior Tag League. They'd be great. I would love it. I think they just lost one tag team, so they might need another one.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, yeah, true. They do need to replace somebody, almost certainly, right? So, as we now know, Francesco Akira is going to be out for a little while.
Yeah.
So
poor Jay.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So then we had Ricochet, Bishop Khan, and Toa Leona. So that's Gates of Agony, correct?
Yes.
And they faced Kevin Knight, Speedball Mike Bailey, and Michael Oku.
Did you know that there were 2 links to New Japan in this match? It didn't make a connection until later on.
Well, Kevin Knight is Kevin Knight's the obvious one. Gates of Agony have been over for tag team tournaments. Yeah, Ricochet
they were in World Tag League and Ricochet. So there
Mike
was
Bailey was in juniors.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this match. So they were all kind of entwined, if you will. And so the whole match was showing Michael Oku getting beaten like a drum. You know, not quite on the level as everyone else. He was great in the match, but very early on, I believe, Toa Leona threw Oku over the ring in kind of like a loose way, and like Oku just basically ragdoll landed on his head and shoulder outside, and it really just set up him just, you know, being the babyface in peril for Jet Speed to rescue throughout the majority of the evening. And for the Rev Pro crowd and that UK crowd, I don't know if it was a great call, because it was like just being at the dance kind of mentality was going to get you over. And I'm not necessarily sure that was the case. The end of it was the Spirit Gun on Oku after the ref got distracted. Ricochet scratched his eyes while Oku had him in a submission. The Gates of Agony put the screws to him. Ricochet hit the Spirit Gun, and that was that.
After that, there was an 8-woman match that is not New Japan adjacent even, so we'll go past that one. You can check out the results if you need to see them, or watch the recap that Jeremy did a few days ago. After that, I'm sure it was, probably was. The AEW World Trios title match was next, and this did include a heavy New Japan presence. In fact, the Bullet Club War Dogs were the challengers. We had Clark Connors, who's been missing in action for a while with the heavyweight tournament going on. Clark hasn't been booked in New Japan. Drilla Maloney, of course, who was a bit of a breakout guy from the G1 this year. And Robbie X, who was just over for Super Juniors, and we like Robbie a lot. They were facing the Ops, which is made up of Samoa Joe, Katsuyori Shibata, and Powerhouse Hobbs. What happened here?
So if you know this group, the Ops, you know that this particular group of War Dogs really didn't have a whole lot of chance of beating them, as much as Drilla Maloney is could shepherd these 2 junior heavyweights through to victory.
bit of a size advantage for Samoa Joe and Powerhouse Hobbs in this one.
It was a spotlight for the Ops in a lot of ways, and also a spotlight for the Bullet Club War Dogs, but you did not really get the sense that this was, you know, the War Dog night and the War Dogs opportunity. You know, Samoa Joe did his signature walk away from the corner when Robbie X did the splash from the top rope. So
I figured it was either Robbie or Connors going to take that one. Yeah,
it was totally going to be Robbie X. Yeah. So if you can imagine these 3 guys versus the Ops for 10 minutes, it is exactly the match that you thought it would be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that was a 0 hour. And then we went on to the main pay-per-view show. And so that opened up with a match that is not to do with New Japan at all, but it was Christian Cage and Adam Copeland teaming up against Kip Sabian and Killswitch. And then we had an AEW TNT title match. It should be sponsored by AT&T, shouldn't it? It wasn't, though. So, but AEW TNT title match. This was champion Kyle Fletcher and Hiromu Takahashi. Went over 15 minutes. So if you took the over when I put the over-under on, what did I say, 12 or something like that? But yeah, AEW TNT title match. Kyle Fletcher, Hiromu Takahashi. What can you tell us about this one?
This match was very, very good. This was classic Hiromu Takahashi. It felt like he was wrestling against Shingo or somebody like that, where it was just a larger guy. You know, like one of those matches he's been doing over in New Japan when he was entertaining the never open weight title matches and stuff like that. So he knew what he was doing. And if you've seen Hiromu, he's a little beefier in the middle than he's been in the past. So he could be like shifting back and forth. With that said, he's still got the high-flying maneuvers. He still moves fast-ish. And Kyle Fletcher's at the top of his game. So Hiromu felt very motivated to be one of his best selves at this show. You know, maybe creatively inclined, along with being at Noah for a little bit. So
Yeah.
I felt like he was there and he was just having a lot of fun, and the match kind of reflected that.
Hiromu also going to be challenging Yohei for their junior heavyweight title in Noah. He's been more of a Noah wrestler than a New Japan. He's not leaving. He's still a New Japan guy, just keeping busy while the G1 tournament is going on. And Noah and New Japan are still fairly close allies in all this at the moment. So
I would maybe check out the We Work Stiff podcast, because they might have some more insights into exactly what Hiromu's mood over in New Japan is, and it's not all sunshine.
No, it does seem like it's a little disenchanted with things, and might be shopping around perhaps for another place to go. That's the impression I'm under here, Jeremy? Is that what you get out of this too?
He's just disenchanted feels like the word. He's not like, the push is what the push is at the best of Super Juniors. Like, he was just a guy in there. He's just been a guy on the roster.
Yeah.
Like, even for World Tag League, he was there to like help Naito prop him up through the match, and their match at Wrestle Kingdom really felt like the last itch he had to scratch in New Japan. So, like, he's just another guy. That
it is an interesting point, isn't it? I mean, what do you do with Hiromu Takahashi? Because if you put him back in the junior heavyweight picture, you can always do that. It'll always be a pretty good match. But boy, he's been the ace of that division for so long that it's almost run a little thin. I don't know if there are any real fresh matchups for him in that spot. And they seem hesitant to make him an open weight wrestler. He's awfully short to be a heavyweight. I don't think that would really work. So is it a case that Hiromu's done what he could do? Remember, Kushida left the company when he was about to be moved down the card, was in the process of being moved down the card. He made Hiromu, and then he was going to be another guy, and he ended up going over to the States, and he ended up working for TNT. Boy, why can't I use my acronyms today? For TNA. When it was Impact, he worked for WWE. Of course, he was in NXT, and just now he's back in a part-time basis, and back and forth to LA. So, I mean, we might be seeing the wind down of Hiromu here, just for the lack of much else to do other than be a guy. Which, once you've been the ace, hard to be a guy.
Generously, going into Wrestle Kingdom this year, is he the second, third, or fourth on the totem pole in the junior heavyweight division?
I think right now, as we sit here and speak, he's certainly behind Desperado and Fujita.
And maybe Doki.
Maybe Doki, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, there's like three guys in front of him, and you could put him in a dream match with somebody, but who's that dream match? Like, you did the Naito match. It wasn't anything special. I know Naito wasn't like at his best, and Hiromu tried, and you saw this match with Fletcher. That Hiromu still got it. But what exactly is the match that just lights the world on fire for Hiromu to look forward to in the next 6 months?
Yeah. It is funny because this match with Yohei in Noah is the most I've looked forward to a Hiromu match in a good minute. It's just like, oh, this will be different. This will be something interesting.
Like, everybody that I talked to was very ho-hum about this Hiromu match with Kyle Fletcher. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. I think they're going to be fucking awesome. And it was really good. But it was just one of those, Hiromu is the old flavor of ice cream.
Yeah, a little bit. And Benkin's mentioning it's crazy. He forgets that some of those people were in NXT, right? There's so many people have come and gone from that company. I won't blame anybody for forgetting some of those cameos. But Maria said it was a solid match. And Benkin says the most memorable thing in NXT are the champions. Could end up that way. That after a while, like the list of people who are former NXT champions is something to look back on and be impressed with. But Brad also mentions that it seems like he mentioned the Kushida thing also. He feels like Kushida to Brad also when Kushida wanted to move up to heavyweight. Both of them are just too small to really do that.
But AEW did exist. You just had a developmental territory that you had to conform to WWE. That's not the case anymore. And it's like, you want these wrestlers to thrive. And you want them to succeed. And you want the promotions to thrive. And you want them to succeed. But the cyclical nature of pro wrestling predicates that both the promotion and the pro wrestlers exist exclusively away from each other so that the promotion can thrive if the wrestler leaves and the wrestler can thrive if they leave the promotion. That's how this all is supposed to work. And right now, the promotion is not thriving because they have been so reliant on the stars that they've been building that they've lost sight of the stars they need to build.
Let's take a look at the next thing, which is, to me, the first true insult of the night, the IWGP World Heavyweight title.
Do you want to talk about the Bozilla or anything like that before?
No.
The Mercedes
No. The IWGP World Heavyweight title match, Zack Sabre Jr., Nigel McGuinness, the World Heavyweight title, 4th on this card. It's just... it's defeating. But Zack Sabre Jr., Nigel McGuinness, Jeremy, we suspected that this would be good because both those guys are going to be heavily motivated to make it good. Nigel in his home country getting a run at Zack, who can handle just about anything out there. It went almost 17 minutes. What'd you think?
You are going to be so upset when I tell you this was fantastic.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad it was fantastic. It should have been higher up on the card.
It absolutely should have, but what they did with it was a love letter to British pro wrestling. So I believe at the very beginning, they started with a video package where Nigel's walking through the streets of London and he sits down with Johnny Saint. And they begin, and they have a chess match. And Johnny Saint begins to explain to him that a pro wrestling match is much like chess and that you give a move to get a move. And very much, and Nigel's just listening and he's looking for that, like that bit of knowledge to beat Zack Sabre Jr. And he's going to Johnny Saint for it. So that's the whole setup for the match. And then they do the entrances. And then like ringside, Johnny Saint and Marty Jones are ringside for
Marty
this.
Jones.
And they're in tears. You know, and it's just one of those like it was the first title defense for the IWGP. And it wasn't one of the people that Zack Sabre should be like facing in New Japan. Like Ren Narita, that's going to be the second title defense that we're going to get to and stuff like that. And I get that it wasn't what it should have been. And that the IWGP was simply a prop for this other like UK British story. But nobody ever thought Nigel was winning this match. And so when they laid all that extra like tapestry over to it, it really made it into something special. And the grappling and the British strong style that they did was truly excellent. And it was played straight. Daniel Garcia cornered Nigel McGuinness, but he didn't do anything other than just witness the match as Zack beat Nigel clean in the middle of the ring.
Okay. Well, for those who don't know, the World of Sport was the name of the wrestling show in England for a very long time. And Johnny Saint was one of the stars of that show. There were a lot over the years. The original Kendo Nagasaki, not the guy that did not a guy that did the great Kabuki gimmick. That was Kendo Nagasaki kind of came over to be a knockoff Great Kabuki when Kabuki got over because there could only be one Kabuki. So you started to get guys like the Ninja and Kendo Nagasaki showing up and basically doing the same gimmick in other territories. There was a different Kendo Nagasaki back then. And well, I mean, the British Bulldogs, really. Dynamite Kid, Davey Boy Smith started off in this area. And it was a lot of grappling. Johnny Saint was different than most. If you ever go back and see Johnny Saint, he wrestles differently than a lot of other people. A lot of very quick, fast twitch movements in and out of holds. There's a lot of Zack in there. Zack's not as quick as Johnny. That was the whole point, is that Johnny would grab your wrist, spin around twice, flip you over, and then before you even knew what was happening, he had 2 other moves on you. That was the whole point of Johnny Saint's ring style. Marty Jones, another guy that worked a style like that. So it was its own type of wrestling, the same way that Lucha Libre looks different than American wrestling.
Right.
And sometimes Japanese strong style wrestling looks different. World of Sport had its own style as well. And then you had things like Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy, who were just huge kick and punch guys. So it was always a variety. But Johnny Saint and Marty Jones were 2 of the bigger stars there. So if those guys got out in front of the crowd and got an ovation, then that's cool as well. And I'm sure Nigel and Zach made their match a proper tribute to the guys they grew up watching.
Yeah. So this was very, very good. This was one of 2 video packages on the entire show that elevated all of it. And there was a lot of smoke and mirrors to make you feel like this was a very New Japanish show. It wasn't, but it was still a good wrestling show. And the right New Japan guys won that were on the card. And I can live with that at the end of the day.
Brad had a question for you, Jeremy. He said, did you hear commentary compare Hiromu to Darby? I think we could get that match that you've been putting out.
God, I was so angry when I was here. Just give it to me, please. All I've wanted for the last 4 years is Hiromu Takahashi versus Darby Allin in a I've lost my mind match.
And we had Walker Stewart was on the show?
Yes. Okay. So Walker Stewart, thank you, Brad, for bringing that up. It was going to come up at some point, and I have failed to mention it. He was brought on for specific matches, and he first came on for Kyle Fletcher and Hiromu Takahashi. He was also on for Zack Sabre Jr. and Nigel McGuinness, and he might have been on for the main event, but I honestly don't remember. But here's the thing. He was on with Bryan Danielson, and those 2 together were transcendent. It was the best commentary team that you could possibly have between those 2 because they were setting each other up and just kind of answering the questions. During the Fletcher and Hiromu Takahashi match, Walker Stewart managed to explain the entire situation with LIJ and the unaffiliated and Naito leaving and everything going on in 30 seconds in the beginning of the match.
All right.
It was just one of those, a single tear came from my eye as I listened and watched Walker Stewart just explain everything that needed to happen and just get it in, get it out, and it just felt so natural.
Maybe our boy's growing up. And now if he could be good on a New Japan show, that would be nice.
Hey.
That's
Steven Conway, everybody. You can find him at ringsidereplay.com.
Colin mentions nothing better than watching Big Daddy or Giant Haystacks on World of Sport on Saturday afternoon. I mean, Colin, you could probably tell us better than I could. How long did they feud? Wasn't it like 20 years? Basically, those 2 were feuding with each other in some form up there on British wrestling. So, well, I mean, look, if Walker had a good night on the microphone, that's terrific. He's good on Stardom. Yeah. He's really good on Stardom. I just wish he were. I wish he were better on New Japan. If he doesn't have Chris carrying him, he bungles a lot of stuff. It's just.
The idea is though the amount of people watching a Forbidden Door podcast where he's got to have his A+ game and he's working with guys like Bryan Danielson, as opposed to being the backbone of the New Japan World commentary on a Road 2 show.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I guess that's true.
He's professional and he's grinding through, but I am not holding him to the same broadcast standard between the 2 shows. And
that's a fair point. I mean, when you're doing a trios match in the middle of a card between a bunch of the guys where the wrestlers don't particularly care, it's a challenge to be entertaining. It is a challenge.
And I will fully say that the dude has a lot on his plate, and that is no excuse if he's slacking off during a New Japan show because he's hustling, working for other promotions and all that stuff. I want him to be giving 100% of it all the time. And I believe he believes that he is doing that. So I don't give him too much of a hard time. But at the same time, if somebody sees something and they want to have constructive criticism or things that they see that he can be better at, I'm not going to gatekeep that and say you shouldn't do that because
sure.
A, B, and C.
Well, I'll tell you what else. Bryan Danielson. if you go back to the original Cruiserweight Classic, which included Kota Ibushi, Zack Sabre Jr., and some amazing talent, Danielson was on the call for a lot of that. He was the commentator. Danielson's a phenomenal broadcaster with that stuff. He's a really good color commentator guy. And that's, we've seen like Henare was outstanding at it when he was doing it. It's a different style, but Danielson is a damn good partner to have. He's really smart about things. He's smart about explaining strategies, which is what I really liked about Henare, like explaining why. I mean, it's a work, but Henare was excellent at explaining why a guy might be doing this move in this situation when he would sit in with Walker and things. Danielson's outstanding with that too. So if they played off each other well, that's a good recipe.
I actually heard a really funny story about Danielson in the Cruiserweight Classic this weekend. If you want to take a second here,
we got time.
Yeah. So I watch these shows with Meltzer, Dave Meltzer, and he's gushing over this announce team and Danielson's ability to like just be fluid with the match and all that. Oh, yeah. And he says, yeah, so I watched him that first night of the Cruiserweight Classic, and I talked to him later on in the night, and I gave him a bunch of notes, and he immediately took everything and like assimilated it into the next night. And I see him doing that still to this day.
It's all thanks to Dave. Oh, thank God we had Dave.
Well, he was really trying to compliment the ability of Danielson to be a sponge and then convey that information outward. And it was just one of those. Of course, you talked to Danielson about the Cruiserweight Classic when he was announcing about it 10 years ago. Of course you did. Like, it's totally normal. Yeah. I'm like, oh, no kidding, Dave. That's cool. You're just sitting there and I'm just petting his dog, just hanging out.
It's all due to
having
Dave.
this conversation, and it's just kind of like, this is a weird world I live in, man. It's a weird world.
It's all thanks to Dave. All right. Well, there you have it. Let's see. A couple of comments. I want to read some of these comments here.
Sure, go for it. Let's have it.
Folks that are listening to it as a podcast, but Colin mentions that nothing better than watching Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks on World of Sport. And I said, what are they viewed for about 20 years? And I believe roughly, yes. Colin mentioned a few other names that are worth mentioning. Mick McManus, Rollerball Rocco, the first Black Tiger. And Johnny Saint. That era of British wrestling was awesome. It's pretty cool. There is a little bit of it out there on YouTube. Not enough. I don't know who has those tapes. Probably the original station up there in England, but boy, it would be nice if some of that hit the waves at some point. USVA guy says, don't be surprised if Walker gets an offer from TK now. Hey, you never know, do you? Because they took Kevin Kelly, and Walker's out there. So if they need a guy, you got to think, Jeremy, that would be the first guy you'd go to, right? The New Japan guy. They're not going to go to CMLL.
I don't know. Does Walker feel like a good fit all the time in New Japan or in AEW?
I don't know, but that with the voice, if he is, the other thing he would have to get used to is having someone in his ear all the time, which I don't think happens all that much in New Japan, but happens constantly in American wrestling.
Yeah, I think he would get an offer. I don't know if he would take it right now from AEW.
No, it would have to depend on the money, wouldn't it?
Maybe, I don't know.
I
don't know. Like, it's one of those, like, you think about it, and
Colin is admonishing me. Hold on, I have to do this. Like, we can't go any further. I know, Colin, you're in Scotland, not England, and how dare I? But the show aired up there, right? You at least saw the show. I would never try to say that you're British, Colin. You're English. You're English, Scottish, Scotland. He's a Rangers fan, for the love of goodness. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just there are times where I sit there and I think AEW is not the only place he could go. There are people watching this show, and we skipped over the 4-way TNT title match, but the idea that Bozilla isn't probably getting offers from multiple companies with a lot of money blows my mind. And
who's to say she's not?
That's what I'm saying. And so it's like, is AEW going to be the only company that sees Walker Stewart playing off Bryan Danielson so well and thinking that there might be an opportunity here for him as well. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, sure. No,
he's
I mean,
so
I wasn't saying
talented
I wasn't saying that's his only choice. I'm just saying that it can't be out of the equation if
it's
something.
not
I mean,
out of the equation. I wasn't immediately assuming that AEW was the only place that might entertain it.
well, is Ian still doing Collision?
Yeah, like they have
he's pretty good.
many announcers.
Yeah, they do have good
Like,
announcers as it is, but you never know. You never know.
Like they're bursting at the seams. Like they fired announcers to get rid of the amount of announcers that they had.
But anything can change, right? There's one thing you know.
Just like, what's to say that he wouldn't get a better offer in like 2 years if he just bided his time?
Yeah. All right, so that's a whole pile of conjecture. A couple of things. They said that Bozilla got over, and Venkin mentions, speaking of Bozilla, we don't know how long her Stardom deal is. Wouldn't shock me if she's going to go back to Japan. Yeah, we're not sure either, but I think her goal is to get to North America, and if she got over on this show, that just would only help the cause. Most people feel like Bozilla was headed, or her goal, she was aiming herself at WWE. Not that she was headed to WWE, that she wanted to go to WWE, but kind of saw the Mariah May path of Stardom, AEW, and then getting because you know how WWE loves stealing guys away from AEW. They love that. So could be a way to get there. She was with Marty Gold and has moved over. So I think
Bozilla and Kevin Knight is very similar. And I'll say it like this. Kevin Knight had an opportunity to stay with New Japan for like a year and a half longer and really just have an opportunity to have kick-ass singles matches and really elevate himself on that card so that when he came over to AEW, he would be in a position not to be getting jobbed out to the Hurt Syndicate and being in a tag team, because there's nothing wrong with that. But had he waited and gotten the seasoning, he'd be in a situation where he'd be higher up on the card in a much more prominent position than he is now. And there's nothing wrong with the position that he's in. But that's all I'm saying.
Well, the guys with 2 contracts, right? The Takeshita, Gabe, Knight, all that stuff. It just seems like Tony Khan is a little nervous to go full force behind them because he's not fully theirs. We've seen what happens when he thinks someone's going to leave for the WWE. He would rather pay them to do nothing than have them be on the TV show. So you kind of put yourself in a no man's land, and maybe the money's worth it, but I don't know. But you do kind of put yourself, there's all kinds of evidence now that you put yourself in a no man's land where you're not going to get pushed too hard by AEW unless you're 100% full on into AEW. Right. So you got to take that into account as well.
If the whole point I was getting at was that Bozilla is now in that same position where she sticks around in Japan for like another year or two and gets that seasoning and gets that extra oomph of her career under her belt. The negotiations with the North American companies are going to be a lot more aggressive, and they're going to be a lot more favoring of acquiring the next hot big talent rather than a speculation talent that she is now.
The best way to get better is ironing, sharpening iron, and the hardest iron is in Stardom right now. And Marty Gold's getting better. Marty Gold is getting better, but the depth of Stardom is unmatched, and just her having all those matches against that talent in Stardom is going to make her a better wrestler. So I think she's doing the right thing, and then she can impress even more when she comes over. Physically, she's got it, and she's charismatic. So if she puts the work together, boy, she's going to be a star here too. Brad mentions Kyle Fletcher mentioned his dream was working WrestleMania until he walked in the door at AEW, and oh well, Tony treated him and Mark Davis. Now he said he can't see himself anywhere else. Well, that's
company man.
That's what you say when you're under contract.
That's what you say before your contract's up.
That's what you say before and then until the contract's up, and then all of a sudden you're doing things like
good for him though.
Saying he's open to his options, which would be very, very smart.
Absolutely good for him. That man has grabbed the brass ring with both hands and has not let go.
Yeah, exactly. And Brad mentions that Brazil is only 21.
So,
barring an injury, she's going to be fine waiting a year or two. Yeah, sure. Just get better. It'll be fine. And Venkin mentions that he misses Tam Nakano. Yeah, well, Tam is Tam has legitimately vanished, has not been back. So yeah, and Colin mentions that Bozilla was on the latest Eve show last Friday. So Bozilla making the rounds, putting herself in front of a lot of people, and that's a smart way to go early in your career. All right, well, we got to go back to this show here. So we had a three-way tag match for the AEW World Tag Team titles that had nothing to do with New Japan. So again, you can go back and watch the recap show there. Was the match, very briefly, Jeremy, was this match good?
There wasn't a bad match on the show. The whole show, B+. We'll get to why it wasn't an A with this next match. We won't talk about the match, but we'll talk about the post.
So you had expressed some reservations, and this is not a New Japan match. We have to get over this. Kazuchika Okada is not a New Japan wrestler, but we're going to talk about it a little bit because you expressed some worries about this one as to whether or not these guys had their heads in the game. The AEW Unified title match, Okada and Swerve, 16 minutes and 38 seconds. Very consistent with the times, by the way. If you look at the times of these matches, I'm going to run them down. Main card, 13:45, 15:26, 15:29, 16:58, 16:02, 16:38. So nobody's getting any more or less time than anyone else until we get a little bit later in the night. What did you think about that?
They had a curfew, Steven.
That's the old WWF thing in Madison Square Garden. The last match was one fall to curfew because you would run into all kinds of penalties and union fines if you went a minute after 11 o'clock.
That's what happened on this 10:30 p.m. at the O2. And they went till like 10:35, so they paid about 5 minutes worth of overage fines.
And folks, you may not believe me when I say this. 5 minutes of overtime is a lot of money. Those fines are not to be trifled with. Okay, Okada versus Swerve. What'd you think?
It was fine. I have gotten to call Okada 4-star Okada in AEW because that's when he tries. That kind of feels like where he's at is he's not quite what he used to be, but when he's given that effort, that's where he's at. But this was all the Swerve show. You know, Swerve was working really, really hard to get a good match out of Okada, and neither one of them seemed particularly interested in doing this match. But when they actually got out there and did it, we got two professionals working a professional wrestling match, if not an amazing match. They both knew that these fans wanted something out of them, and they did their best to give it, even if they weren't in sync.
Fernando loved it. He said it was his match of the night. So Fernando enjoyed it.
Swerve worked incredibly hard. It was a Swerve Strickland match through and through.
Well, if there's 17,000 people there and you can't get motivated for that, that'll get your juices flowing when you have a hot crowd that's large. And
but I mean, like I call it a 4-star match. A 4-star match is fine. It's just not like, Okada. You think about these 4 3/4, 5-star, 5 1/4 matches that he has, and you get 80% of that from a guy who's given that of his body for a decade plus. And you're just like, yeah, all right, I get it.
And Colin mentions, it's okay. He's not really a big fan of either guy, but it was okay. That was his thought on that. So we got a range of emotions on that one. After that, there was an AEW Women's World Title match. Toni Storm beating Athena. Again, very consistent with the time, 15 minutes.
The thing that we got to jump back to is after this match, Swerve Strickland was attacked by Wardlow, who is now a member of the Don Callis family. And so the entirety of the Don Callis family comes out after this to surround Callis, Okada, Fletcher, and Wardlow, with the last guy being Takeshita. And this is the only appearance of Takeshita the entire evening of Forbidden Door, post G1 climax, in which you can start to see Takeshita and Okada kind of look at each other like, no, I'm the top dog here. And so they're setting that up. But for me, I gave the entire pay-per-view a B+, and I would have given it an A had they done anything other than this with Takeshita.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting thought over here, too. It's a little bit insulting that the winner of the G1 was barely mentioned on this show also. Again, a guy whose the future is in Takeshita's hands in a lot of ways. Certainly a world heavyweight title shot coming up, and he doesn't come out and face up to Zack or anything like that. And I know Zack's got another match before we get to all that. That one's going to happen at King of Pro Wrestling. We know that now. That's going to be Takeshita and Zack, just like the G1 winner last year. Zack had his title shot at King of Pro Wrestling. it's a little insulting again to just kind of ignore all that, and even if they mention that he was the G1 winner, to not feature that in any way. It's just another example of how New Japan isn't a priority to AEW except to put the lion mark on this pay-per-view.
Yeah. Something isn't right. Like I can't. You can't look at this and think that everything is rosy and that everybody's on the same page here and that there is a clear vision in which the story of Takahashi is going to unify the pro wrestling world by winning the G1 and being a top guy in AEW. And the two companies can't even get on the same page about the story.
Yeah. It's a fair point. All right. So after that, we had the women's title match, Toni Storm beating Athena. And then we had the AEW world title match, Adam Page defeating MJF in what had to be an interminable 31 minutes and 31 seconds. Cannot imagine watching that match for that long. Then we had a lights out steel cage mess of a match. Will Ospreay, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Darby Allin, Kota Ibushi, and Kenny Omega drawn out of a hat, defeating Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Gabe Kidd, and Huey and Dewey Jackson, 32 minutes and 34 seconds. This match, we've been over it over and over again, makes zero sense. Shouldn't have happened the way it did. Shouldn't have happened at all. But we were stuck with it as our main event. So, Jeremy, how'd you do? How was it? It was probably some decent action. I know Darby really decided to got his ear mangled because Moxley thinks he went back to his CZW days. I mean, having Gabe Kidd and Tanahashi in the same is disrespectful to New Japan. The whole thing, again, ignoring key New Japan storylines so that they could put Tanahashi in a match that he doesn't belong in. What happened here?
So, I don't even know where to start here. I guess we'll start with this match began with the baby faces coming out, and it was Darby Allin coming out and Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi and Hiroshi Tanahashi. They all come out and everybody's getting these massive, massive cheers. And then it comes to Will Ospreay's entrance and it goes to black. And you have Alex Windsor doing narration over I'm sorry, I'm getting a little choked up here because I was thinking about it. All of Will Ospreay's career, the Rev Pro, the New Japan, all of it, the things that he's done and the things no one could believe that he did. And it's just one of these things that you're watching this and you're like, is this his last goddamn match he's ever going to have? And they're treating it like it could be. And there's this weight of when he's coming down and they're all hugging each other, the emotions are very, very real. Will's crying,
he has to have some pretty serious surgery, right?
He's going to be going away for a while, whether it's 6 months or 18 months or whatever it is. He doesn't even know yet what his surgery is. It was one of those. You go to the doctor, you get MRI, and then you have a match like this. You're going back to the doctor and getting another MRI because you have no idea what you did in this match. So whatever happened after this match is what he's gonna do. So a very, very real, emotional, volatile, experience. And so it's visceral. And then they actually have the match and the Death Riders come out and Gabe and I guess Moxley's got a bad hip right now. Gabe Kidd had the meniscus. The Golden Lovers and Tanahashi and Will Ospreay, they're all injured in some way, shape, or form. This was a bunch of guys who were all hurt in some way, trying to have a match where they didn't get further hurt. And the athleticism was there. There was spots of people you're hurt. What are you doing? Kind of thing. But then they still went through it. There was spots where they tried, the baby faces had to talk Tanahashi off of jumping off of a ladder.
Again, we're in this thing that's supposed to be this ferocious fight inside of a steel cage, but we're going to do a comedy spot where everybody has to wave the old guy down from a ladder. This is the incongruity that makes AEW the booking mess that it is.
They wanted to make it a big 5-on-5 party match in which the crowd laughed at the funny spots, cheered at the high spots, and all this stuff. The Young
God
Bucks
forbid we take anything
back.
seriously here. God forbid we take anything seriously.
The Young Bucks did a callback to a spot where they had gummy bears, which back were in their bag instead of tats, which called back to their indie dates a long time ago. It was the whole deal where
they're still doing indie dates. They're just on.
They're still doing all that stuff. It was an AEW show, and so Gabe Kidd was firmly an AEW wrestler, a member of the Death Riders. They had him as a member of the Bullet Club, but he was a Death Rider, and now he is Death Riders. And so, the babyfaces won when Tanahashi gave a high fly flow on Matt Jackson, and the babyfaces celebrated, and they did the whole fake AEW trademark at the bottom of the screen. And then the Death Riders attacked Will Ospreay, and they pulled the injury angle, which seemed somewhat unnecessary since everyone knew that he was going away. But this was to set up in some way, shape, or form that Moxley is going to be a player for the entirety that, Will Ospreay's gone. And so,
just in case you were wondering, John Moxley was going to be
whether Moxley is an important guy in AEW or not.
Who knows? Might not be.
They're going to keep up that, so you can.
Thank God you want to keep Moxley over. God forbid he draw an audience, because every time he comes on the screen, they lose tens of thousands of viewers on that thing. Just look at the ratings patterns; they're right in front of you.
Yeah, the way it's all laid out, when Will
Ospreay comes back. What photos does he have with Tony?
Or Moxley's going to be the champion, and Ospreay comes back for it, if he comes back at all.
What photos does John Moxley have that he just hemorrhages audience week after week after week, and Tony just keeps putting him in a big? Does Tony not look? Is Tony not paying? I mean, boy, it's just so baffling, that company. It just makes no sense. Huey Dewey and Moxley dropped over a couple of weeks ago. Their segments combined dropped 130,000 people off of the Dynamite audience, which only starts at about 600,000. And they hemorrhaged a lot of that.
I will push back in that when Tony Khan started AEW, he had a core of guys that included Cody, that included Jericho, that included Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Hangman Page, and then John Moxley. Right now, the value of the Young Bucks is lower than it ever has been. Cody's gone. Jericho's probably leaving. Kenny Omega has a countable amount of matches left in his career based off of what we're seeing in him right now. Moxley is incredibly important to Tony Khan, whether or not Moxley matters to the greater wrestling, or if his influence sphere is more important or diminishing. Right now, for the back, or being the backbone of AEW, Moxley and Hangman are more important than ever.
Except people don't want to watch them. The evidence is there.
I'm telling you the logic behind why Tony Khan is so strong behind those guys, because that is what's left of where the company started, and he needs that for the optics as much as possible.
All right. So there's a thing that Brad mentioned. He said they mentioned Takeshita winning the G1 a lot between Forbidden Door and last night. Callis mentions it all the time. Okay. Which is just shows that how won their most important tournament, but he's not important enough to be on our TV shows.
There's one way to do it, and it's just the magic, right?
Well, yeah, put him on the show then. I mean, he's not important enough to have a match at Forbidden Door, but he just won the biggest tournament. Not important enough to be here. He just kind of shows up and wanders out. We don't need to actually
hammering it home in.
But that doesn't mean anything to the audience.
It's good, but you hammer it home on commentary while he's having a match.
Yes, thank you. And show how good he is, and have him win the match, and then all of a sudden, the G1 winner looks like somebody who can win a match in a big pay-per-view. That helps. Making him look like he can't make the pay-per-view doesn't make the G1 look like anything.
There were decisions and compromises made. I disagree with those decisions and compromises, and I'll just leave it at that.
All right. Well, that's enough for Forbidden Door.
The verboten door is closing for yet another year. It is verboten to discuss it with Steven Conway.
No, I'm just saying that we can move on from it to something that actually matters to New Japan.
I'm just having my fun with you.
Now, we mentioned the Gabe kid is now officially part of the Death Riders, is showing up more and more in AEW. Maybe less and less in New Japan. The signs do not look good for Gabe Kidd being long for the Japanese side of the Atlantic, or the Pacific for that matter. The Pacific is the ocean that it's in. What is wrong with me today? What is wrong with me today? I had coffee, I promise. But the point being, Gabe Kidd seems like he's going to be spending a lot more time in AEW than he is in New Japan, although he does have a title match coming, so he will be back, but he's starting to feel more like their guy than our guy, correct?
Yeah, so news broke on social media yesterday that Gabe Kidd is a member of the Death Riders, going to be spending more time with AEW going forward. But he's, the Fightful report also wanted to make sure that, it was clear that he had significant time left on his New Japan contract. And that sounds like something Gabe Kidd would tell Fightful in terms of the information to make sure that everybody's aware of that. And look, I don't want to take a victory lap because it was obvious. Like, you and I have been talking about this for a year and a half, that Gabe Kidd was going to get snapped up by somebody within the next 2 years. And it would be surprising if it didn't happen. And it happened. And he's with the Death Riders, which is one of the two premier heel factions in all of AEW right now. So he's set up for success. It's that conversation that we've all been having. It's like, you need to have that breakout match. He had that match with Kenny Omega, and then a year later, like, he's going to be gone from the company. He's going to have that Wrestle Kingdom match. Maybe they take the global title off of him beforehand, but I certainly expect him to lose the global title at the Tokyo Dome and put another guy over, and then, bye kind of thing.
And we got a little debate going on here in the comments. I want to mention Crash TV mentions Ren Narita is facing Zack Sabre Jr. at Destruction in Kobe. That is a title match. Yes. Takeshita's title match is going to be a King of Pro Wrestling. So I think the kayfabe version of this is whoever comes out of whoever comes out of Destruction in Kobe will defend against Takeshita. So right now it's Zack because he's the champion, but that could flip to Ren Narita should Ren Narita win the title at Destruction in Kobe, which no one thinks he's doing. Right? I mean, we don't think Ren's going to win this thing.
There are graphics out there with the Ren Zack Sabre Jr. on one side versus Takeshita at King of Pro Wrestling, because Takeshita has broken a tradition and said, I'm calling my shot at this. I'm taking my title match here, regardless of who the champion is. Yeah. So it's independent of Zack Sabre Jr. doing the title run of one by one. It's Takeshita just saying, no, I'm calling my shot here. Like, this is what's going to happen. And
King of Pro Wrestling, whoever's the champ, show up. You got to defend against me. A KOP
right.
does.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So small difference, but I get why. I get the whole thing. So what were we at?
Well, USVA guy mentioned the scrum. Did you see any of the media scrum?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. What part?
He just mentioned, let's talk about the media scrum. So there wasn't anything that really struck you as odd or interesting?
Like the only thing, it's all like part of the show. It's not a media scrum in the way that you were going to get newsworthy press conference.
Neither company wants that. Neither company wants that. The quarterback talking about like the injury that he actually went through, like you know what I mean? Like, we're not getting that kind of information at these things. And so I don't take it seriously. The only thing that like was even remotely a conversation piece was that going forward, if you have a Casino Gauntlet contract for a world title shot, you have to call it a week in advance. You can't just call it the day of or 5 minutes before or whatever. Other than that, like, man. USVA guy mentions that the final question was asked of Tony about the future of Forbidden Door possibly being in Japan and what the future holds with the relationship for New Japan. Tony didn't answer and thanked NJPW. And
what else are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I think probably because none of that's really settled. I don't think they're going to do Forbidden Door in Japan. The timing doesn't work for a pay-per-view in the US, which is what Forbidden Door really is. The time zones are all out of whack. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense from an AEW perspective to do a Forbidden Door pay-per-view in Japan. As far as the relationship goes with New Japan, well, we've talked about it enough here. What we think of it, we don't know what New Japan thinks of it. I'm hoping they're starting to wake up that maybe this isn't as beneficial. And we can be allies, we can be friends, but maybe these cross-promoted pay-per-views aren't worth the trouble for New Japan and how it tends to bumble up their own booking or just ignore it altogether in a lot of cases. It doesn't seem to be benefiting New Japan much.
The big strategy for New Japan has to be sticking with the homegrown Japanese talent and cultivating Yuya and Ryohei and those guys and disengage from the Gabe Kidd and the David Finleys and the Bulk Up. They're hot. They're interesting. But when they're hot and they're interesting, they leapfrog to somewhere else that will pay them. And so that's been the formula, and it worked really, really well. But they need to find a formula in which the guys that they're counting on to be supplanting their business aren't the guys that are going to leave in 2 years.
All right. So we have gone through the Forbidden Door here, and we're going to close it behind us. We will move on. Now, we mentioned the Gabe Kidd news. Not really news, but just this is the thoughts on Gabe
Kidd. The writing's on the wall.
One piece of news we did get was the dreaded black and white lion mark for Francesco Akira. Now, he competed at the Rev Pro anniversary event on the 22nd, and unfortunately fractured his wrist. So that's going to put him on the shelf for a while, and the first bit of damage comes to the Super Junior Tag Tournament, which we're assuming he was going to be a big part of. And unfortunately, Akira will be out for that tournament. There is not a timetable quite yet for his return. Fractured wrist, not the longest recovery in the world unless something goes sideways with it. So should be a few months, but that's enough to take him out of Junior Tag League, unfortunately.
I would take him out of Wrestle Kingdom. That's one of those things that you bring him back like right after Wrestle Kingdom for like a big like return moment, but you can't plan for Wrestle Kingdom. And we were talking about the top three with Hiromu being 4. I would say Akira is like 5 or 6 in that like totem pole of the junior heavyweight division in there. Maybe I had a Robbie Eagles, that kind of thing, but I wish him well, man. That's a really bad timing. He's incredibly talented. I saw some pictures. It's a fracture. It's going to require surgery. So he's going to be out a little bit of time. And nothing to say other than it just sucks, man. Wish you nothing but the best.
Crash TV has a thought on the current status of New Japan booking. It says the NJPW is stalling to get to the end of Tanahashi's run of the Dome this year. Losing Naito didn't help, of course, but even Aaron Wolf Moonshot is left until then. It does seem like they're putting an awful lot of eggs in the Wrestle Kingdom basket. He also mentions at the start of the year, there was this impression that Tanahashi's final run was taking precedence, somewhat at least. I don't think that's in any way a good excuse, though, for what it's worth. It's been a shaky years. But Brad has a good point, and I like this. He said the AEW CMLL relationship is much more of what AEW and New Japan should have been. Talent going back and forth, looking good in both places. Yeah. Title being held by the other company at times, but not without a lot of disputes on it. Yeah, they seem to do it better. And really, the CMLL New Japan relationship, it would be closer to what the AEW one should be, where the CMLL guys come over for Fantastica Mania and everybody has a great time and we enjoy it. And every once in a while, the New Japan guys go over there and are in big featured matches at Arena Mexico, but it doesn't grind everything to a halt for a while. It seems like the CMLL knows how to do these interpromotional things better than AEW and New Japan do with one another. So
one of the things I like about the CMLL AEW relationship is that the heels and babyface are consistent between the two promotions. Between New Japan and AEW, there is a complete inconsistency of who you're supposed to cheer and boo based off of the convenience of one person making the decisions of how this should be. When we had that War Dogs match versus the Bucks and the Good Brothers at the New Japan of America show. And the War Dogs had just come off of that match where they were like these huge badass baby faces, and they came into the New Japan of America show and they were these heels. That was everything that was wrong with the relationship right then and there, is that you were not able to carry over what's happening in one promotion into the other and keep it seamless. Like CMLL, if that had happened, you'd still be able to pivot back and forth and understanding the baby faces and heels without any problem whatsoever. And that just doesn't seem to be the case with Japan.
Yeah, Ultimo Guerrero doesn't go to Fantastica Mania and join Hantai. Just doesn't do it. So, and Venkin says, you know what I noticed about CMLL too is that they're also on good terms with Stardom, and occasionally you get someone from CMLL on the Stardom card. So it's clear they know what to do. For a company that has its troubles in Mexico, they handle international relations beautifully. The CMLL, you leave and you're dead to us philosophy has hamstrung them in a lot of ways, and they have lost a lot of really good people because of that stubbornness in Mexico. But you're absolutely right. When they're dealing with companies from other countries, they kind of do it really beautifully, and it works out well for everybody. So if they could just cool off on all that stuff, they don't have to be dead to you if they leave. Don't take it so personally if they go to AAA. But when AAA was originally born, the idea was to run EMLL, as it was called back then, completely out of business. That was the goal, and they've been pissed about it ever since. It's been 30 some years. Nobody from that era is still there. It's just everybody just breathe a little bit.
Generational hatred.
Yeah, a little bit, isn't it? And part of it is family business, right? So some of that stuff sticks.
Not toxic at all. Not toxic.
No, it always works out well. Okay.
All right. What else we got?
Let's look at some of the title matches that have been announced coming up, because now we know a couple of things. First of all, September 13th, Master Wato, Yo, and Toru Yano will defend the never openweight 6-man titles against Ryusuke Taguchi. Coach found some partners, Jeremy, and he found some pretty good ones. They're El Desperado and Hiroshi Tanahashi. So that'll be the main event of the September 13th card as we move toward Destruction in Kobe. And if they win, they will defend their titles in only 2 days, because that same trio, Taguchi, Despe, and Tanahashi, are scheduled for a 2 out of 3 falls, no limit kinship match, no time limit kinship match in Hokkaido, because they're doing a Hokkaido tour. After that, after the 13th, they're going up and hitting a lot of the smaller towns in Hokkaido. Normally, they only go to Sapporo, but hitting a few of those other towns in Hokkaido, they're going to be facing in a no time limit 2 out of 3 fall match, Honma, Makabe, and Yano on the 15th, 2 days later. Could be a never open weight trios title match if they want to do the switch. And then we mentioned the title matches. Destruction in Kobe will have Zack versus Ren Narita, and then King of Pro Wrestling will have Zack versus Takeshita. We're assuming Zack. It'll be whoever the champion is. We assume it's going to be Zack against Takeshita. And then we have the Destruction in Kobe 28th card. Jeremy, any thoughts before we run down very briefly, because we've got a long time before this show happens, the card for Destruction in Kobe? Any other thoughts before we move on to that?
Other than they could have done something a little more exciting than this card. A lot of people are just looking at all this and just being like, okay, so that's what we're following up with the G1 with. And with that little bit of teaser, I'm going to let you run this card down.
Okay. We're going to preview more of this. There's a Blue Justice card that's coming up and all that. Yeah. But on September 28th, Destruction in Kobe, we have a card. There's some trio stuff going on there, a couple of but we have a Tanahashi Final Road connection match, not kinship. We're not that good of buddies. Connection match is called Hiroshi Tanahashi against Great Khan. So they'll get their match with Tanahashi. Then we have a never open weight title match. That's Bolton Oleg against Don Fale. Good luck, Bolton.
Okay.
IWGP World Tag Team Title match. This one I'm excited about. We have the Knockout Brothers, Oscar and Yudo Ice. The former Youngblood against Taichi and Tomohiro Ishii in the first defense. by Ishii and Taichi.
This should be the main event.
And then we will have a special singles match, Hiromu Takahashi against Taiji Ishimori.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Then we will have another special singles match, Yota Tsuji against David Finlay. Interesting.
Okay.
Just
Again.
yeah. Well, what do we know about special singles matches in New Japan? Is they usually lead to title challenges later, don't they?
Either that or somebody coming out and kicking their ass.
Uh-huh. After that is the Global Heavyweight Championship match, Shingo Takagi against Gabe Kidd. Makes you think. Just after a special singles match, Global Heavyweight title, because the world title's tied up. Mm-hmm. So Global Heavyweight title match, Shingo Takagi challenging Gabe Kidd. And then it'll finish up with Zack and Narita.
That's going to be a real interesting match, that Gabe Kidd match. Because I wonder what the reception is going to be for him. Because Shingo is a lot more beloved in New Japan, and Shingo's been talking a lot of mad, chirping a lot about Gabe Kidd's loyalties and such affairs. So they're using a little bit of reality, shoot, work kind of thing, whatever, to get interest in a kind of a sagging product right now.
Yeah. And
I'm going to be here for the show. I'm going to be into the show. But if I'm going to tell you that I'm really excited for this show, I'm not.
And we'll have to see. But I don't blame you. I don't blame you. A couple of other thoughts that we have out here. Crash TV 83 mentions CML leaving it to WWE to work their magic, in quotes, with AAA over the next couple of years. I think it could be a different result since the Latino fan base is significant. We'll see. Now, and Venkin mentions they just bought it. I wonder how long they just disbanded like they did with NXT UK. Well, a couple of thoughts I have about this. And I think WWE has bigger aspirations than that. They wanted to create NXT UK to get that pipeline of talent because there were a whole bunch of really good people in the UK at that time. There have been a wave of stars and people that they thought a lot of. And so they kind of created NXT UK to soak all that up and keep World of Sport from being revived. They wanted all the talent. And WWE wants all the talent. AAA, another play to get Mexico. Now, here's my tinfoil hat thing. WWE has television contracts with the Peacock thing's going away, but Comcast Universal, which owns Peacock and which owns USA Network, still has SmackDown and will for a while. Okay. They also own a couple of Spanish language networks, including Telemundo, I think Telemundo, but certainly Univision in the United States, which is a big television network of Spanish stations, mostly in the big markets, right? In large cities. I think they're going to try to get CMLL on TV. I think they're going to try to get a TV show, not CMLL, AAA. I think they're going to try to get AAA a TV deal on one of those networks. They can get them on if they can get them on Univision, if they can get them on something like that, and then I think they might try to go at CMLL. I mean, the whole goal here is to dominate the industry, and they're doing it in a different way. Remember how they, with Vince, he would just kind of like steal everybody's, not steal, but he would sign away everybody. So he didn't steal them. They weren't under contract. He didn't violate anybody's deals. They weren't, they were on handshake deals and they left. You can do that. Point being now that you can't just do that. People are under contracts now, right? You can't just do that the way you used to do. Well, what they're trying to do is sew up all the television partners. So if you were going to start up an MMA company or a wrestling company, WWE has contracts with all of them now, except for Warner, which has AEW, and Amazon doesn't have a wrestling show. Besides that, I think they're trying to get a foothold in these countries. If AAA suddenly has a network television deal, they can start, maybe siphoning some people away from CMLL and start stripping them of talent too. I think that's the goal. Now, whether they succeed or not, CMLL has survived a lot over almost 100 years of being in business. And it's a different thing because it's hooked into the tourism industry, and they have the free buses going to the tourist hotels. And it's something you do in Mexico City as a tourist. You go to CMLL on Friday nights and see the big Super Viernes show. So it's a little bit different than their competition with AEW. But I think they have their sights set on the Mexican wrestling scene as well. And if they can get AAA on television in a prominent spot, suddenly AAA becomes a more attractive landing spot than it used to be for Mexican wrestlers.
Yeah,
Just
I
a thought.
mean, the idea of choking out other promotion with programming, and absolutely, like, it seemed like WWE getting a foothold, and they've already begun to turn AAA into WWE AAA, and it will change more over time to a point where it's no longer recognizable to what it is. But that was the whole point, you know. Like, the family wanted to sell, WWE wanted, you know, territories in Mexico. It was a perfect match for the two, and kind of a deal with the devil, and everybody's gonna suffer.
Vankin says, I'm not the expert on this, but out of NXT UK, what did they really gain? Walter and Rhea Ripley. Well, yeah, true. They also had Toni Storm for a while. They didn't know what to do with her, but they had Toni. Pete Dunne, I don't think that's to be discounted. Have they made the best of these guys once they're on the main roster? No, but you can't say they didn't get talent out of it. There was real talent to be had out of that group. And really, Piper Niven and what's her name now? She was crud. She used to be Alba Fire. Alba Fire.
Yeah.
Right now is in a spot with Chelsea Green. You can argue about whether they have good gimmicks, but they got talent from that organization. And
they
were wrestlers.
They didn't put as much money as you think into acquiring the NXT UK territories.
Yeah.
You know, Rev Pro was very, very smart in saying no. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, they made their money back with Gunther.
Yeah, they really.
They already have.
And like Rhea Ripley, good Lord.
The entire investment that they put into those two, getting that level of superstar out of that territory, finding them, cultivating them, getting to the main event level, and the amount of money that they're making, putting those two at the top of the card, headlining shows.
Yeah.
What did they get out of it? They got a lot.
Yeah, they did, and that's a good point, Jeremy, because you think about a baseball team will have 100 guys in the farm system, and if 2 of them become homegrown major league,
if you get Juan Soto out of that group, or then, you get, you know what I mean, like, I don't know, you just it's the diamond in the rough, it's the 5-tool player, it's like you see what Rhea and Gunther looked like when they joined WWE. They put in the work. Like, they have done everything to be the alpha level athlete performer that they need to be. So, like, work in, work out, it worked out fine.
And Crash TV's mentioning, that it'll be telling if the WWE try to get AAA a TV deal for Friday nights to run against CMLL. That I don't think it matters what night of the week they're on. They're not going to try to run shows that draw 10,000 people every week in Mexico City. That's not the point. I think if they have a TV show, even if it's noon on Saturday on Univision, it would just be a place where they can bring talent in, and young talent in Mexico coming up can look at this and say, I can be a national TV star over here. And now it's an alternative, which AAA is really a spot where you go when you can't get into CMLL if you're a Mexican wrestler, because they either have a problem with you, like with Rush and the whole Munoz family, or they have they have that falling out with CMLL, and now they're not welcome back. Same thing would happen with Penta and Phoenix and all that. Or they just don't perceive you as being a CMLL star, and AAA is where you go. If they can make AAA into a spot where a young wrestler coming up thinks, Arena Mexico, that looks great, but boy, that looks great too, being on national TV. Now you can start to keep that talent for yourself. And I think that's the goal, more than trying to hurt Super Viernes, which, with AEW, they're trying to choke off talent and TV partners so that the thing will just wither on the vine. They don't really, and of course they're pecking away at it by counter programming the pay-per-views, and then they're just death by 1,000 cuts. And then they're trying to keep the roots from getting any good water, choking off new talent. That's
good way to put it.
Yeah.
All right. Any lightning round questions we can do, or we want to wrap this thing up?
No, I think that is about it. So next week we're going to be covering any news that comes out between now and then we'll be a week closer to the Blue Justice show, the event that is in Chiba, promoted by Chiba's own Yuji Nagata. He'll be in the main event of that show against Hiroshi Tanahashi, and we'll get a look at some of the preview matches that are coming up as we build toward Destruction in Kobe. So
Blue Justice is where everyone gets my best Derek Zoolander glare.
and who could resist that, huh, folks? So there you go. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody who joined us here live. Thank you for your interaction, your questions. To anybody that's joining us later here, either on YouTube or as a podcast, we're grateful for your time. We'll be back next Thursday at our usual time. So for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. This has been Speaking of Strong Style, and we will talk to you again real soon.